The waitress detected an impending danger and cried out a warning, saving the Mafia boss's life. She fully expected him to simply walk away, profoundly grateful. Instead, he stared at her, as if she had suddenly become his most cherished possession. Now, she finds herself ensnared in his world, under his unyielding gaze, and he has made one chilling fact unequivocally clear. She is not leaving. The neon sign of Rossi's diner pulsed erratically against the slick Chicago pavement, casting intermittent scarlet shadows across the deserted parking lot. It was precisely 2:47 a.m., and the city reeked of that perilous silence, the kind that compels prudent individuals to secure their doors. Matteo Vitali, meticulously fastening his charcoal suit jacket, stepped into the crisp November chill. Behind him, the fleeting warmth of the diner vanished as the door swung shut. His two bodyguards, Frankie and Tommy, immediately flanked him, their eyes methodically sweeping the darkness with the predatory intensity of hunting hounds. "Boss, cars are ready," Frankie uttered, gesturing toward the sleek black Mercedes gliding almost imperceptibly 30 feet away. Matteo barely registered the remark. His thoughts were miles away, still lingering on the recent meeting, on the intricate deals poised to redefine the Southside territory, and on the adversaries he had ruthlessly dispatched to prevent their obstruction. At 34, he had forged an empire from the fragmented legacy of his father. Blood, astute strategy, and an indomitable will had rendered him invulnerable, or so he had convinced himself. His Italian leather shoes clicked rhythmically against the asphalt as he approached the Mercedes. The driver, Marco, one of his most trusted men, sat rigidly behind the wheel, the engine purring softly. Everything appeared normal, yet everything felt profoundly wrong. Matteo's hand reached for the door handle. "Don't get in the car!" The scream tore through the silence like a gunshot. Matteo's hand froze. His guards instantly drew their weapons, swiveling towards the source of the frantic cry. From the diner's side entrance, a young woman burst into the parking lot, her waitress apron still cinched around her waist, her dark hair a wild halo framing her face. Please don't open that door," she gasped, rushing towards them with terror-stricken desperation. "Stay back!" Tommy aimed his pistol squarely at her chest, but Matteo raised a hand, halting him. Something in the woman's eyes, a raw, unfiltered terror, compelled him to pause. In his world, fear was the prevailing currency. He instinctively recognized the genuine from the fabricated. This was real. "Frankie," Matteo said softly, his voice raspy like gravel, "open the door. Boss, open it!" Frankie cautiously approached the Mercedes, gun raised. He yanked open the back door. Two men exploded from inside the car, not Marco's backup, but assassins who had been crammed into the footwell and behind the seats. One lunged at Frankie with a knife. The other raised a shotgun toward Matteo. The parking lot erupted in pandemonium. Matteo moved with the seamless precision of a man who had navigated 3 decades in a world where hesitation meant certain death. His hand swept inside his jacket, drawing his Beretta in one fluid motion. He fired twice, hitting his target center mass, just as his father had taught him. The shotgun-wielding assassin crumpled before he could even squeeze the trigger. Frankie grappled with the knife wielder, both men crashing against the car. Tommy rushed forward, but a third attacker, one they hadn't seen, emerged from the driver's seat, firing indiscriminately. Marco's body slumped in the front, blood splattering the window. He had been dead before they even stepped outside. The waitress shrieked and dropped to the ground, hands clasped over her head. Matteo's second shot found the driver assassin's throat. The man gurgled and fell. Frankie finally overpowered his attacker, snapping the man's wrist and slamming his head against the car door until he went limp. Then, silence, broken only by their ragged breathing and the faint hiss of the Mercedes's punctured tire. 3 bodies, 3 seconds. Such was Matteo's world. He didn't lower his gun. His eyes meticulously swept the parking lot, the rooftops, the encompassing shadows. "Clear the perimeter! Now!" Tommy and Frankie dispersed, weapons drawn, scrutinizing every corner. Matteo approached the trembling waitress, still huddled on the ground. He stood over her, gun at his side, and for the first time, truly observed her. She was young, perhaps 24 or 25, pretty in that unassuming girl-next-door way that seemed utterly out of place in his brutal reality. Her name tag, its letters faded, read Clara. Her hands quivered violently as she slowly looked up at him, her brown eyes wide with shock. "Get up," Matteo commanded, his voice cold despite the adrenaline still surging through his veins. Clara struggled to her feet, nearly collapsing. She pressed herself against the diner's brick wall, her gaze fixated on the bodies, on the blood seeping across the pavement, and on the man who had effortlessly killed 3 people as if it were nothing. Matteo holstered his gun and stepped closer. Too close. Intimidation was an automatic reflex. "How did you know?" His words were quiet, yet laden with menace. I... Clara's voice fractured. "How did you know?" Each word landed like a hammer blow. Tears streamed down her face, but she forced the explanation out. "I've seen them before. Those men, 2 years ago, they came to my family's restaurant in Indianapolis. They took my brother, Antonio. They took him, and we never..." She choked on a sob. "I recognized the one with the knife, same scar on his neck. I could never forget." Matteo scrutinized her face, searching for any hint of deceit. He had interrogated hundreds. He could detect deception in a heartbeat, a breath, a fleeting blink. This girl was telling the truth, but that presented an even greater problem. Frankie returned, slightly out of breath. "Perimeter clear, boss, but we have to move. Cops will be here in 5 minutes, maybe less." Matteo's gaze never left Clara. "Your brother? These men took him?" She nodded desperately. "They wanted money from my family. We paid everything we had, but Antonio never came home. The police said he probably ran away, but I knew. I knew they killed him." Her voice cracked with 2 years of buried grief. Tommy appeared at Matteo's other side. "Boss, she could be part of this, could be the bait." "I'm not! I swear to God I'm not." Clara's legs nearly gave out. When I saw them getting out of that car through the kitchen window, I knew something was wrong. I knew." "She saved your life, boss," Frankie observed carefully. "But Tommy's right. Could be a setup. Make us trust her. Use her later." Matteo's jaw tightened. In his world, coincidences simply did not exist. But then again, neither did waitresses who risked their lives screaming warnings at Mafia bosses. Sirens wailed in the distance. He made his decision. "Bring her." "What?" Clara's eyes widened. No, I need to go home. I need to..." Matteo seized her arm, not roughly, but with enough firmness to convey his point. "You just witnessed a hit on me. You know their faces. You're coming with me, or you're dead by morning. Your choice." "That's not a choice! It's the only one you've got." The sirens grew louder. Frankie pulled up a second car, a nondescript Honda they kept for emergencies. Matteo pushed Clara towards it. "Please," she whispered, one last desperate plea. "I just wanted to save your life." Matteo paused at the car door, studying her tear-streaked face one final time. Something flickered in his chest, something he had long since buried beneath scarred tissue and cold calculation. "That's exactly why you're coming with me," he said. Then he shoved her into the back seat and climbed in after her, leaving the bodies, the blood, and the only semblance of a normal life Clara had ever known behind in that parking lot. The Honda's tires shrieked as they vanished into Chicago's dark heart, and Clara realized with burgeoning horror that she had merely exchanged one nightmare for another. The Honda tore through Chicago's deserted streets, brazenly running red lights and weaving through shadowy industrial zones where no one dared ask questions. Clara sat pressed against the door, as far from Matteo as the confined back seat would allow. Her entire body trembled from the biting cold, from gut-wrenching fear, and from the indelible image of 3 men dying, searing itself into her mind. Frankie drove with one hand, his other resting on a gun in his lap. Tommy twisted in the passenger seat, scrutinizing Clara as if she might abruptly detonate. "Who do you work for?" Tommy's voice was sharp, accusatory. What? Nobody. I work at the diner." "That was too convenient. You just happened to see them. Just happened to recognize them." "I told you, they took my brother." "Yeah, real sob story." Tommy's eyes were frigid. "How much did the Collab family pay you, or was it the Russians?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Clara's voice rose in panic. "Enough." Matteo's singular word instantly chilled the air in the car. He sat perfectly still, his blood-splattered suit appearing stark black in the dim light. His face was unreadable, devoid of anger or kindness, merely calculating. "We'll get answers at the estate." Clara's stomach plummeted. "Estate? No, please. Just let me go home. I won't tell anyone what I saw. I promise." "Your promises mean nothing." Matteo finally looked at her, and in his dark eyes, she saw something that terrified her more than any gun or dead body. Utter emptiness. "You're a liability now. The men who set that trap will know it failed. They'll know someone warned me, and they'll come looking. Then give me a bus ticket. I'll leave Chicago tonight. They'll never find me." Matteo's voice was almost gentle, which somehow only made it worse. "You think they won't already be watching your apartment, your mother's house in Indianapolis?" Clara's blood ran cold. "My mother? You know where my mother?" "I know everything now." He held up his phone. "Made 2 phone calls before we left that parking lot. Clara Marie Brennan, 26 years old. Moved to Chicago 8 months ago after your family's restaurant went bankrupt. Your mother, Susan, still lives on Maple Street. Your younger sister, Emma, is a sophomore at Indiana State." Tears streamed down Clara's face. "Please don't hurt them. They have nothing to do with this." "I don't hurt civilians," Matteo stated flatly. "But my enemies do. So, until I know who you really are and what you really know, you're staying where I can see you." The car pulled through a gate that materialized seemingly from nowhere, hidden among trees and deepening darkness. They drove up a winding private road for 2 full minutes before a massive house appeared. No, not a house, a sprawling mansion, 3 stories of stone and glass that unequivocally broadcast wealth and power. As the Honda skidded to a halt, armed figures materialized from the shadows. Clara recognized the chilling precision of their movements, a mirror of Matteo's brutal efficiency in the parking lot. These were clearly no ordinary guards. Matteo emerged, meticulously straightening his jacket, entirely unfazed by the bloodstains. "Bring her inside. Guest room on the 3rd floor. Lock it." "Boss, are you sure about this?" Frankie interjected, seizing Clara's arm and hauling her from the car. "She could have a tracker. She could be broadcasting our location right now." "Then search her and confiscate her phone," Matteo commanded, moving towards the mansion. He paused. "And Frankie, she's not to be harmed. Not until I decide her purpose." Clara stumbled, dragged by Frankie up polished marble stairs and through majestic doors that likely cost more than her entire life. The interior was a symphony of dark wood and opulent artwork, exuding a cold, museum-like beauty. A stern-faced woman in a black suit materialized, professionally frisking Clara, confiscating her phone, keys, and even the pen from her apron pocket. "She's clean," the woman reported. "No weapons, no wires, no tracking devices." "That proves nothing," Tommy growled, ascending the grand staircase behind them. "The clever ones don't carry devices. They commit everything to memory." "I'm not clever," Clara's voice cracked, bordering on hysteria. "I barely finished high school. I serve eggs and coffee. I have no idea what you people do." "We're businessmen," Matteo stated, his footsteps barely audible on the plush carpet as he approached from behind. "Businessmen don't murder people in parking lots." "Depends on the business." They reached the 3rd floor. Frankie ushered Clara into a room resembling a luxurious hotel suite. A king-sized bed, a private bathroom, even a small sitting area. It would have been exquisite if it weren't a gilded cage. "Why?" Clara demanded, turning to Matteo, desperation eclipsing her fear. "Why are you doing this?" "I saved her life. Perhaps," Matteo mused, leaning against the doorframe, those empty eyes scrutinizing her. "Or perhaps you're precisely what my enemies wanted. An innocent-looking girl who would make me drop my guard. My driver, Marco, had a wife and 2 children." Matteo continued, his voice hardening to stone. "He was with me for 12 years. Someone granted those assassins access to my car, my schedule, my precise whereabouts. Someone betrayed me tonight, and until I uncover their identity, everyone is a suspect." He advanced, and Clara instinctively retreated until her back met the wall. "So, here's how this will proceed," Matteo said softly. "Tomorrow you will recount every detail about the men who abducted your brother. Every face, every word. Because either you're lying and working with my adversaries, or you're telling the truth, and you are the key to finding who is trying to kill me." "And if I tell you everything?" Clara whispered. Then perhaps you'll live long enough to return home." Matteo's expression remained impassive. "And if I don't believe you," he added, "then you won't." He retreated into the hallway. Frankie followed, pulling the door shut. Clara heard the definitive click of the lock, a sound like a coffin ceiling. She was utterly alone in a golden cage, encircled by ruthless men, captive to a man who saw her as either an instrument or a threat. Clara slid down the wall, burying her face in her hands, allowing herself to finally break. Just hours ago, her greatest concern was earning enough tips for rent. Now, she questioned if she would see tomorrow. Clara found no sleep. She sat on the edge of the bed, watching the dawn break through the barred windows, painting her opulent prison in mocking shades of gold. Every sound startled her. Footsteps in the hall, doors closing somewhere below, the distant murmur of voices. At 7 a.m., the lock clicked. Frankie entered, carrying a tray. Coffee, eggs, toast. He placed it on the desk without a word, his face inscrutable. "Am I going to die today?" Clara asked, her voice hoarse from dried tears. Frankie paused at the door. "That depends on what you tell the boss." "I've already told him everything." "Then you had better remember more." He left, relocking her in. Clara forced herself to eat, knowing she would need her strength for what lay ahead. The eggs tasted like ash. An hour later, 3 men arrived for her. Tommy led the way, his hostility barely contained. Frankie followed, and behind him, a new figure. A slender man in an expensive suit with silver hair and calculating eyes. He looked like an accountant, but the way he scrutinized Clara sent shivers down her spine. "The boss wants to see you," Tommy stated. "Try anything stupid and I'll put a bullet in your knee. Understood?" Clara nodded, her voice failing her. They escorted her to the second floor, through hallways adorned with art worth millions, into a study rich with the scent of leather and old money. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive oak desk, and seated behind it, Matteo Vitali, appearing far more menacing in the morning light than in the darkness. He had changed into a fresh, black-on-black suit. His face was clean-shaven, his dark hair impeccably styled. He looked like a CEO, not a killer, but Clara knew better now. "Sit." He gestured to a chair facing his desk. Clara complied, feeling as though she faced both judge and executioner. The silver-haired man closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. Frankie and Tommy flanked Matteo's desk like silent sentinels. Matteo opened a folder and spread photographs across the desk. Crime scene photos. Brutal, bloody, horrifying. Clara's stomach rebelled. "Recognize any of these men?" Matteo's tone was purely business. Clara forced herself to look. Bodies in alleys, in cars, in warehouses. Some shot, some subjected to worse fates. Her hand trembled as she pointed to one photo. "Him, the one with the scar. That's the man from the parking lot. The one, Frankie—" She couldn't finish. "Good," Matteo interjected, setting the photo aside. "His name was Vincent Russo, low-level enforcer for the Calibre family. Your turn, Tommy." Tommy slammed down a different photo, a restaurant with shattered windows and overturned chairs. "This is your family's place in Indianapolis, isn't it?" Clara's breath hitched. "How did you—" "Answer the question." "Yes, that's Papa Giovanni's, my father's restaurant." Tears stung her eyes. "That's where they took Antonio." 2 years ago, the Calibri family was expanding into Indiana, the silver-haired man articulated, his voice smooth and cold. They employed protection rackets. Pay up or be destroyed. Your father refused. He couldn't afford it. We were barely surviving," Clara's voice broke. "They came 3 times. The 3rd time, they dragged Antonio out by his hair and—" She trailed off, the memory too agonizing. "And you paid," Matteo finished, $20,000. Your mother's entire retirement savings." Clara's head snapped up. "How do you know that?" "Because I make it my business to know everything." Matteo leaned forward, his eyes piercing hers. "Here's what troubles me, Clara. The Calibri family doesn't typically kill once they've been paid. They are businessmen like me. Once they receive their money, the debt is settled. They didn't keep their word. Or," Tommy interrupted harshly, "your brother wasn't kidnapped at all. Perhaps he owed them money himself. Gambling debt, drug debt. Maybe he played you, and now you're playing us." "Antonio was 17. Clara retorted, anger slicing through her fear. He worked at the restaurant after school. He didn't gamble, didn't do drugs. Everyone says that about their dead brother, Tommy sneered. We don't know he's dead. Clara surged to her feet, fury eclipsing common sense. We never found a body. The police never found anything. He just disappeared. Sit down. Matteo's voice was quiet but absolute. Clara sank back down, trembling with rage and grief. The silver-haired man spoke again. Miss Brennan, I'm Vincent Castellano, Mr. Vitali's attorney and advisor. I need you to grasp something. The timing of your arrival is extraordinarily suspicious. You appear in Chicago 8 months ago. You secure a job at a diner Mr. Vitali frequents. Last night, you are conveniently positioned to witness assassins and warn him. From our perspective, this appears to be a very elaborate setup. A setup where I save his life? Clara's voice rose. That makes no sense. Sure it does, Tommy interjected. Save the boss, earn his trust, infiltrate the organization, then feed information to his enemies. Classic infiltration. I don't even know who his enemies are. I don't know anything about any of this. Clara turned to Matteo, desperation etched on her face. Please, I'm a waitress. I live in a studio apartment that smells like mold. I eat ramen 4 nights a week. I'm nobody. I just saw men who hurt my family, and I couldn't. Her voice cracked. I couldn't let them hurt someone else. That's it. That's the only reason I screamed. Matteo studied her in silence, his expression unreadable. The room seemed to shrink around her. Finally, he spoke. Here's what will happen. You will recount to Vincent everything you recall about your brother's kidnapping. Every detail, no matter how insignificant names, faces, cars, words, everything. Then, we will verify your story, piece by painstaking piece. And then I can go home? And then we will ascertain if you are a victim or a spy. Matteo stood, buttoning his jacket. If you are lying, Clara, if you are conspiring with the individuals who murdered Marco and attempted to kill me, I promise you will regret ever learning my name. He walked towards the door, then paused. But if you are telling the truth, if you truly are just an unlucky waitress who saved my life, he looked back at her, something flickering in those cold eyes, then you might be the key to annihilating my enemies. Either way, you are mine now, until I know which. The door closed behind him with a sound like a death sentence. Clara sat alone with Vincent Castellano, who produced a notepad and pen with the cold efficiency of a man about to dissect her entire life. Let's begin from the start, he said. The day they took your brother. 3 days passed like years. Clara remained confined to the 3rd-floor room, yet her prison had become strangely comfortable. Meals arrived thrice daily, not prison fare, but actual cuisine. Fresh attire, perfectly sized, had been discreetly placed for her. The bathroom boasted a lavish array of expensive toiletries. She even discovered books on the nightstand, as if a considerate captor had attempted to alleviate her confinement. The swift normalization of such luxury was, in its own way, unsettling. Each day, Vincent Castellano subjected her to hours of relentless questioning, meticulously recording every detail. His demeanor was thorough, patient, and utterly devoid of emotion, akin to a surgeon dispassionately dissecting memories. Clara recounted Antonio's infectious laughter, his culinary aspirations, and the horrifying image of him being dragged into a black van by Vincent Russo. By the 3rd day, she felt utterly depleted and hollowed out. That evening, Frankie appeared at her door with an unusual directive. Boss needs you downstairs. Clara's heart pounded against her ribs. Why? She managed to ask. Didn't say, Frankie replied. Just said to bring you. She trailed him down to the 2nd floor, but instead of the familiar study, they halted outside an unfamiliar door. Frankie knocked once. From within, Matteo's strained voice called out, "Come in." Frankie opened the door and motioned for Clara to enter. She found herself in what appeared to be a private sitting room, complete with leather couches, a bar cart, and subdued lighting. Matteo was stretched out on a couch, his shirt unbuttoned and hanging open, blood seeping through a bandage wrapped around his ribs. "Close the door," Matteo instructed. Clara heard the click of the latch behind her, leaving them alone. "You're bleeding," she stated, the obvious truth escaping her lips as her mind struggled to process anything else. "One of those assassins got me with his knife," he explained. "Didn't realize how deep until today." Matteo grimaced, pressing a hand against the wound. My usual doctor's out of the city. Vincent tried, but he's useless with medical. You need a hospital, Clara interjected. I need discretion. Matteo's gaze met hers. Hospitals ask questions. Gunshot wounds, stab wounds. They call the police. Can't have that. Clara understood. He existed entirely outside the confines of the law. Why am I here? She asked. Vincent says you told him you were pre-med for a year before your family lost everything. Matteo gestured toward a first aid kit on the coffee table, a professional-grade assortment, the kind paramedics carried. Is that true? Clara nodded slowly. 1 year at Indiana University before we couldn't afford tuition anymore. Then you know how to stitch. She stared at him, bewildered. You want me to? The bleeding's getting worse. Vincent already cleaned it and tried to close it, but he did a job. Matteo's jaw tightened in pain. So, either you help me or I bleed out on this couch. Your choice. Clara's mind raced. This was insane. He had held her captive, threatened her family, and treated her like a criminal suspect for 3 days. Now he expected her to save his life? Yet, observing the blood bloom across the bandage, she couldn't deny the gravity of his injury. Fine, she heard herself say, but I need better light, and you need to lie flat. Matteo moved to the couch, stretching out with a barely suppressed groan. Clara switched on every lamp in the room, then opened the first aid kit. Her hands trembled as she pulled on latex gloves. Nervous? Matteo watched her with those unreadable eyes. I'm about to put a needle in a Mafia boss, Clara replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Yeah, I'm nervous. Something akin to a smile flickered across his face. Fair point. Clara carefully peeled away the blood-soaked bandage. The wound was a gruesome 4-inch gash along his ribs, where Vincent's hurried stitches had already torn open. It cried out for professional surgical intervention, but at the very least, she could stem the bleeding. This is going to hurt, she warned. I've had worse. She believed him implicitly. His torso was a living map of scars, bullet wounds, knife marks, and an old burn. This was a man forged in the crucible of survival, a testament to enduring what would obliterate most others. Clara cleansed the wound with antiseptic. Matteo didn't flinch, but she saw his jaw clench, the muscles in his neck tightening. Tell me something, he said through gritted teeth. Why'd you really scream that night? Clara threaded the needle, grateful for a distraction from his unsettling proximity. I told you. I recognized him. No, I mean, why did you care? You could have stayed silent. Let me die. Safer for you. She pressed the needle through skin, beginning the first stitch. Because letting someone die when you can prevent it makes you just as guilty. Philosophical for a waitress. My father was a good man. Clara worked meticulously, her hands rediscovering the familiar rhythm from anatomy labs and volunteer work. He taught us that silence in the face of evil is its own kind of evil, even if it costs you. Cost you plenty, Matteo observed. Ended up here. Better than living with the knowledge that I could have stopped a murder and didn't. She tied off the first stitch, then started the second. What kind of person would that make me? A smart one, a safe one, a dead one, eventually. Internally, Clara glanced at his face, where it genuinely counts. Something shifted in Matteo's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or a nascent recognition. As if, for the first time, he saw her as a human being rather than an inconvenience. They fell into a comfortable silence as Clara worked, her fingers moving with practiced precision, closing the wound stitch by precise stitch. She was close enough to smell his cologne, a sharp contrast to the coppery scent of blood and antiseptic. Close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Close enough to notice he watched her with an intensity that had nothing to do with pain. You're good at this, he said quietly. I wanted to be a doctor, a surgeon, specifically. Clara's voice was soft, laced with a familiar old grief. Guess life had other plans. Life or my enemies. She tied off the final stitch. Both, maybe. Clara bandaged the wound with clean gauze, her hands finally steady. When she looked up, she found Matteo still watching her, not with suspicion anymore, but with something else entirely, something that made her breath catch in her throat. Thank you, he said, and the words sounded oddly alien from him. You're welcome, Clara replied, peeling off the gloves, acutely aware of their mutual vulnerability. He was shirtless and wounded. She was close enough to touch, close enough to hurt, close enough to... She stood abruptly. You should rest. No heavy lifting for at least a week. Matteo sat up slowly, wincing. You're giving me doctor's orders? Someone has to. Clara moved toward the door, needing distance. You're not invincible, Mr. Vitali. That wound could have killed you. Matteo, he corrected. She turned back. What? Call me Matteo. Mr. Vitali was my father. He buttoned his shirt over the fresh bandages, his eyes never leaving hers. And Clara? Vincent confirmed your story, the dates, the locations, everything. You're telling the truth about your brother. Clara's heart seized. So, I can go home? Matteo's expression darkened. No, because now that I know you're not working with my enemies, I know something else. What? The men who took your brother are the same ones trying to kill me, which means you're not just a witness anymore. He stood, moving closer despite the obvious pain it caused him. You're bait, and they'll come for you eventually. Then let me run. They'll find you. Matteo stopped inches away, and Clara realized she wasn't afraid anymore. She should be, but the fear was gone. The only place you're safe is here with me. That's not safety. That's a different kind of cage. Maybe. His voice dropped lower. But at least in this cage, you're alive. They stood there, the air between them thick with a tension neither could name. Captor and captive. Killer and healer. Two people who, by all accounts, should not care for each other, but somehow did. Go back to your room, Matteo finally said. But tomorrow, things change. How? You wanted to find your brother. I want to find who's trying to kill me. Tomorrow, we start looking for answers, together. Clara woke the next morning to the sounds of shouting. Angry voices echoed through the mansion. Matteo's voice, raised louder than she'd ever heard it, was met with equally heated responses. She pressed her ear to the door, straining to catch fragments of the conversation, but could only discern disjointed phrases. Compromise the entire operation? Should never have brought her here. Your call, boss, but this is on you. The lock clicked. Clara jumped back as the door swung open. Frankie stood there, his face grim. Get dressed. Something's happened. 10 minutes later, Clara stood in Matteo's study, surrounded by a phalanx of angry men. Matteo sat behind his desk, his face carved from stone. Tommy paced like a caged animal. Vincent stood by the window, gazing out at the grounds with an unusual tension. 4 other men she didn't recognize lined the walls, all armed, all radiating fury. On Matteo's desk lay a manila envelope. Tell her, Tommy snarled at Matteo. Tell her what her little rescue mission cost us. Matteo's eyes, cold as ice, fixed on Clara. Word got out that I survived the hit. My enemies know someone warned me. They've identified you. Clara's blood turned to ice. How? The diner has security cameras, Vincent said quietly. Someone hacked the footage. You're visible running into the parking lot, screaming. They know exactly who you are. And they know you're here, Tommy added viciously. Which means they know the boss is protecting you, which makes us all look weak. Tommy, Matteo's voice cracked like a whip. Enough. But Tommy wouldn't be silenced. She's brought this entire organization under scrutiny. The Calibri family knows we have her. The Russians are asking questions. Even our own allies are wondering why you're harboring some random waitress. I said enough. Matteo stood, and the room fell silent. He picked up the manila envelope with deliberate control. This arrived an hour ago, delivered to our front gate by a kid on a bike who got paid $50 and claims he can't describe who hired him. He opened the envelope and pulled out a single photograph. Clara's mother, Susan Brennan, walking out of her house in Indianapolis, carrying groceries. A red circle had been drawn around her head. Clara's knees went weak. No, please. Matteo laid out more photos. Her sister Emma, leaving a class at Indiana State, also circled. Clara's tiny apartment in Chicago, the door marked with a red X. There's a note, Matteo said flatly in red. Hand over the girl by midnight tomorrow, or everyone she loves dies. Once our business is concluded, rest assured we will raze every one of your establishments, eliminate every soldier under your command, and hang you from the Chicago River Bridge. Vitali, you should have perished in that parking lot. Instead, you'll witness the collapse of your entire empire. See. For Calibri, Vincent declared. This is Carlo Calibri himself, the family head. They're declaring war. Over a damn waitress, an armed man sneered. No. Matteo's jaw tightened. They're declaring war because I survived their assassination attempt. Clara is merely a pretext. Then hand her over, Tommy erupted. Cut our losses. We can't afford a war over some girl. She saved my life. Matteo's voice was dangerously quiet. And now she's going to cost us everything. Tommy slammed his fist on the desk. Be rational, boss. One life versus dozens, versus the entire organization. It's basic arithmetic. Clara felt the room shrinking around her, everyone's gaze fixed on her as if she were a ticking bomb. Perhaps she was. If you give me to them, she heard herself say, her voice trembling, will they leave my family in peace? No, Vincent interjected before Matteo could respond. They'll kill you and your family regardless. That's their M.O. The threat isn't negotiable, it's inevitable. Clara's legs finally gave way, and she sagged into a chair, overwhelmed by the horrific realization of her actions. I killed them by screaming, by warning you. I killed my own mother and sister. You didn't kill anyone, Matteo said, his tone softening. They did, the moment they decided to come after me. Touching, Tommy sneered. But it doesn't solve our dilemma. We have until midnight tomorrow to decide. Surrender her and appear weak, or keep her and face war. There's a third option, Frankie spoke up. We relocate her family, secure them somewhere safe, then fortify our position here. They'll eventually find them, Vince countered. The Calibri family possesses vast resources and connections. Hiding civilians long-term is nearly impossible. Then what course of action do we take? Another man inquired. All eyes turned to Matteo. He stood silently, gazing at the photographs of Clara's family, his hand unconsciously brushing his ribs where fresh stitches held him together. Stitches Clara had sewn while he was at his most vulnerable. Boss, Tommy pressed, we require a decision. Matteo's eyes met Clara's across the desk. In that moment, she witnessed something that startled her. Guilt. This man, who killed without hesitation, who ruled through fear and violence, felt remorse for the havoc his world had wrought upon hers. Retrieve her family, Matteo finally commanded. Frankie, send our best team to Indianapolis immediately. Take Marcus and Leo. Extract the mother and sister. Inform them there's a credible threat. Do not elaborate. Bring them here. Boss, that's... Tommy began. Not negotiable. Matteo's voice was like steel. Furthermore, I want every property we own locked down. Double the guards. Recall everyone from non-essential operations. If Calibri desires war, we shall grant him war. Over her? Tommy gestured at Clara with disgust. Over the principal, Matteo corrected coldly. I do not negotiate with those who threaten me. I do not surrender those under my protection, and I certainly do not permit anyone to dictate how I manage my organization. He leaned forward, eyes blazing. Carlo Calibri attempted to kill me and failed. Now he strives to manipulate me with fear. If I yield, every crew in Chicago will perceive me as weak. So no, we are not handing her over. Then we are going to war over a liability, Tommy stated bitterly. We are going to war because I choose to. Matteo's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. And anyone who disputes that decision may leave right now. But if you remain, you will obey orders. Understood? Silence. Then, one by one, the men nodded. Good. Get moving. Frankie, you have 4 hours to reach Indianapolis and return. Vincent, contact our legal associates. I want every legitimate business protected. Tommy, coordinate the security lockdown. Matteo rattled off orders with practiced efficiency, transforming from conflicted to commander in seconds. The room emptied until only Clara and Matteo remained. You should have given me to them, Clara whispered. My life isn't worth a war. That's not your decision to make. Matteo walked around the desk, standing over her. You saved my life when you had every reason not to. You stitched me up when you could have let me bleed. You're not a liability, Clara. You're my responsibility now. I don't want to be your responsibility. Too late, his voice softened. Your mother and sister will be here by evening. They'll be safe. And tomorrow, when Calibri comes for you, he'll find an army instead of a victim. Clara looked up at him, this dangerous man who had upended her life, who had chosen war over the easy path, who looked at her as if she were worth protecting. "Why?" she asked. "Why risk everything?" Matteo was quiet for a long moment. "Because the men who took your brother are the same ones who tried to kill me. Because you showed courage when it mattered. And because—" He paused, something flickering in his expression. "Because I'm tired of being the man who only survives. Perhaps it's time to be the man who saves someone." He turned and walked toward the door, then paused. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be hell." Clara's mother and sister arrived at sunset, escorted by Frankie and his team. Clara rushed down the grand staircase as her mother stumbled through the front doors, eyes wide with terror and confusion. Emma clung to Susan's arm, both women appearing as if they had been thrust into a nightmare. "Mom!" Clara threw her arms around Susan, holding her tight. "Clara, what's happening?" Susan's voice quavered. "These men came to the house with guns, saying we were in danger, saying, you—" She pulled back, gripping Clara's shoulders. "What have you gotten yourself into?" "I'll explain everything. I promise you're safe now." "Safe?" Emma's voice was shrill. "They snatched us from our home. They wouldn't tell us anything. Clara, are you in trouble with—" She looked around at the armed men and the mansion, finally settling her gaze on Matteo, watching from the study doorway. "Oh my God, is that a mob boss?" "Emma, please." "Girls?" Susan's voice was firm despite her fear. She looked directly at Matteo. "I don't know who you are or what my daughter is involved in, but we are not criminals." "We're just collateral damage," Matteo said, stepping forward. His voice was respectful, almost gentle. "Mrs. Brennan, your daughter saved my life 4 nights ago. Unfortunately, the people who tried to kill me have decided to use your family to get to her." Susan's face went pale. "Saved your life? Clara? What?" "I'll explain," Clara said quickly. "But first, let's get you both settled. Please, Mom, trust me." An hour later, Clara sat with her mother and sister in a secure guest suite on the 2nd floor. She recounted everything: the parking lot, the assassins, the kidnapping, Matteo's protection. Emma looked terrified. Susan looked heartbroken. "This is because of Antonio," Susan said quietly. "Isn't it those same men?" Clara nodded. "I recognized one of them, Mom. Vincentu, the one with the scar." Susan closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "We should have left Indianapolis after they took him. Should have run far away, but I kept hoping—" Her voice broke. "I kept hoping he'd come home." "Mrs. Brennan," Vincent Castellano appeared at the door, his expression unusually sympathetic. "Mr. Vitali would like to speak with Clara. It's about her brother." Clara found Matteo in his study, documents spread across his desk. He pulled up files, photographs, financial records. 2 years of investigation into the Calibris family? "Sit," he said. "I need you to tell me everything about the kidnapping again. Every detail, especially about the ransom." Clara sank into the chair. "Why? Vincent already—" "Because I think I missed something." Matteo's eyes were intense. "The ransom? You said your family paid $20,000. Who delivered it?" "My father. They gave him an address, an abandoned warehouse on the east side of Indianapolis. He went alone, left the money in a duffel bag like they instructed, and then nothing. 3 days went by. No Antonio, no phone call. My father went to the police, but they said it was probably a runaway situation. That teenage boys disappear all the time." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. "We kept calling, kept searching. My father drove to that warehouse every day for a month, hoping for a clue. It destroyed him. 6 months later, he had a heart attack. The doctor said it was stress." Matteo pulled out a photograph, a warehouse abandoned and graffitied. "This one?" Clara's breath caught. "Yes. How did you—" "Because I know that warehouse." Matteo's jaw tightened. "It's owned by a shell company. I've been tracking it for 2 years, trying to figure out who controls it. The trail went cold every time." "What does that mean?" "It means your brother's kidnapping wasn't random." Matteo spread out more documents. "Carlo Calibri doesn't engage in small-time extortion in Indiana. He's about high-level operations, protection rackets, gambling, money laundering. He wouldn't waste time squeezing 20 grand from a failing restaurant. Then why? Unless it wasn't about the money. Matteo pulled out another file. 2 years ago, Carlo Calibri was making a move to consolidate power. He was eliminating rivals, absorbing smaller operations, building an empire, but he needed leverage against someone. Clara's stomach twisted. Leverage? My father's restaurant? Who supplied your meat and produce? The question seemed random. A distributor called Marino Foods. They were local, family-owned. Why? Matteo's expression darkened. Because Marino Foods was a front company for the Genovese crew, a smaller family that controlled parts of Indiana. They were rivals to Calibri, and he wanted them gone. Clara's mind raced, trying to connect the dots. I don't understand. What does that have to do with Antonio? Everything. Matteo leaned forward. Think about it, Clara. A 17-year-old kid who works at a restaurant supplied by a rival organization. A kid who might have seen things. Deliveries, unfamiliar faces, illicit financial exchanges, all pieces of a mosaic that could serve as damning evidence. Antonio had never uttered a word about what he might have witnessed. Perhaps, in his innocence, he truly didn't comprehend the gravity of the dark deeds unfolding before his eyes. Matteo's voice, now imbued with a palpable urgency, cut through Clara's thoughts. But Calibris, he would have understood perfectly. He seized your brother, extorted ransom from your father. Your father paid, and then Antonio simply vanished, leaving no trace, no body ever found. A wave of nausea washed over Clara. You believe Calibris abducted Antonio because of what he might have seen? I believe Calibris took Antonio as a tactical weapon against the Genovese family, Matteo asserted, his conviction unwavering, perhaps as irrefutable proof of his ability to penetrate their operations. Or it could have been to coerce their cooperation, or simply to send an unambiguous message. Matteo's fists clenched, his knuckles white. 6 months following your brother's disappearance, the Genovese crew imploded. Their top brass were apprehended on severe federal charges: racketeering, murder, fraud. Someone, clearly, had turned state's evidence. You think Antonio? Clara's voice was barely a whisper. I suspect your brother may have been compelled to testify, Matteo replied, his gaze unwavering. Or perhaps he uncovered something so devastatingly incriminating that Calibris exploited it to dismantle his adversaries. He met her eyes with a profound intensity. Regardless, he wasn't killed for ransom. He was taken because he was an expendable pawn in a clandestine war you never even knew was raging. Clara's world reeled, the ground beneath her suddenly unstable. For years, she had carried the crushing burden of believing Antonio's death was a consequence of her father's perceived failings, his inability to pay enough, to do enough. But if Matteo's theory held true, if Antonio had indeed testified, if he had provided evidence, where would he be now? Perhaps in witness protection. Or, a chilling alternative, dead because he had evolved into an inconvenient liability. Matteo's voice softened, a stark contrast to his earlier intensity. I don't possess the answers, Clara. But what I do know is that Carlo Calibris operates with a distinct pattern. He ruthlessly exploits innocent civilians as leverage, then discards them. He did it to your family. And he's attempting to do the same to you, a strategy he's perfected over many years. How many people? Clara breathed out, her voice barely audible. More than I can count, Matteo responded, pushing himself up and moving towards the window, his form silhouetted against the night. I've been meticulously building a case against him for 3 long years. Every time I draw near, crucial evidence mysteriously vanishes. Witnesses disappear without a trace. The man is virtually untouchable because he possesses a devilish intellect. He weaponizes people's families against them, coercing cooperation through sheer terror. He pivoted, turning back to face her. But you, Clara, you are fundamentally different. You aren't paralyzed by fear of him. You are fueled by righteous anger. You desperately seek answers about your brother, and you, surprisingly, might just be the linchpin to his downfall. How? She questioned, a flicker of bewildered hope stirring within her. Because you recognized Vincent Russo, Matteo declared, a fierce intensity blazing in his eyes, a depth Clara had never witnessed before. It was hope, raw and unyielding. Because you can identify faces, pinpoint locations, recall specific details that could link to his countless other victims. You are not merely a liability, you are a witness, and if we can unearth others like you, individuals who have survived Calibris's insidious operations, we might finally amass the insurmountable evidence needed to utterly destroy him. Clara rose, her legs trembling, yet an unshakable resolve began to solidify within her. If there's even a remote possibility Antonio is alive, then we will find him. Together, Matteo pledged, his voice resonating with determination. But first, we must survive tomorrow. When Calibris inevitably comes for you, we will demonstrate to him that he chose the absolutely wrong family to terrorize. For the first time since that horrifying night in the parking lot, Clara experienced a sensation beyond raw fear. She felt purpose. The assault commenced at precisely 3:00 a.m., hours before Calibris's ominous midnight deadline had expired. Clara was wide awake, perched in the third-floor window seat, observing the estate grounds bathed in the stark glow of security lights. Sleep was an impossible luxury, haunted by the specter of what the coming day promised. Her mother and Emma, exhausted from their torrent of tears and the unanswered questions Clara couldn't provide, were at last finding a fitful rest in the adjacent suite. She nearly missed the subtle movement amidst the trees, a fleeting shadow, almost imperceptible. Then another, both advancing purposefully toward the mansion's east wing. Clara's heart seized in her chest. She sprang up, rushing to the door, pounding on it with desperate urgency. "Frankie! Tommy! Someone!" The door flew open. Tommy stood there, his firearm already drawn and pointed. "What is it?" "There are men outside, in the trees heading toward the house." Tommy's expression hardened immediately. He snatched his radio. "Possible breach, east perimeter, all units." The window directly behind Clara exploded inward. Glass shards rained down as a grappling hook, an ominous metallic claw, crashed through, embedding itself deeply into the wall. Tommy violently shoved Clara to the floor, just as a torrent of gunfire erupted from outside. Bullets ripped through the room, splintering wood and shredding furniture. "Stay down!" Tommy roared, returning fire through the gaping, shattered window, his shots precise, controlled, and deadly. An ear-splitting alarm shrieked throughout the mansion. Shouts echoed from below Matteo's men, mobilizing frantically, but the attackers had timed their incursion with pinpoint perfection. They had meticulously studied the estate, identified its vulnerabilities, and struck precisely where they knew Clara would be. A masked figure, armed and moving with chilling military precision, swung through the broken window. Tommy turned to engage, but a second assailant followed swiftly behind. They flanked him, operating with ruthless, professional efficiency. Clara scrambled backward, retreating as the sudden, brutal fight ignited. Tommy brought down one attacker with a savage, close-quarters shot, but the second slammed into him, sending them both tumbling to the floor in a tangled, violent heap. More grappling hooks impacted the mansion's walls. It became horrifyingly clear. They weren't merely after Clara. This was a full-scale assault. Clara made a desperate dash for the door, but a third attacker materialized in the hallway, effectively cutting off her escape. He was a towering, massive figure, 6 feet 4 inches of solid muscle and menace, his face concealed by a black mask. "Target acquired," he reported into his radio, his voice chillingly calm. "Third floor, east wing." Clara instinctively backed into the room as he advanced. Behind her, Tommy was still fighting, but visibly losing, his face already turning purple as the other attacker choked him with a strap from his own rifle. The massive man seized Clara's arm with a bone-crushing grip. "Carlos sends his regards," he rumbled. Panic surged through Clara's system, a wave of icy dread. She was going to die. Her family was going to die. Everything Matteo had promised was crumbling, disintegrating before her eyes. No. Something profound snapped within Clara. She had endured 2 years as a victim, 4 days as a terrified prisoner. She had spent her entire life watching wicked men take whatever they desired, not anymore. Clara's free hand shot out, seizing a heavy crystal lamp from a nearby side table. She swung it with every atom of her remaining strength, smashing it directly against the masked man's head. The lamp exploded, crystal shards and blood flying in a grotesque shower. The man staggered, his iron grip momentarily loosening. Clara swung again, this time wielding the lamp's base, connecting squarely with his temple. He dropped like a stone. Behind her, Tommy remained trapped, his face a terrifying shade of purple. His assailant didn't register Clara's approach until she brought the lamp base down with brutal force upon his skull. Once. Twice. The man released Tommy and slumped sideways, utterly incapacitated. Tommy gasped, clutching his throat, desperate for air. "Jesus!" he choked out. The door burst inward. Matteo stormed in, flanked by Frankie and 3 other guards, all weapons raised. He instantly assessed the chaotic scene. 2 attackers neutralized, Tommy barely conscious, Clara standing over them, shaking violently but alive, clutching a bloodied lamp. "Clear the floor!" Matteo barked, his voice sharp with command. "Frankie, get Mrs. Brennan and Emma to the safe room, now!" More gunfire erupted from downstairs. The mansion had become a war zone. Matteo grabbed Clara by the shoulders. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, utterly unable to speak. "She saved my life," Tommy croaked from the floor. "Hit them with a lamp, both of them." Matteo's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of shock crossing his face, quickly replaced by something akin to respect. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Then stay close to me." He kept one hand firmly on her arm as they navigated the hallway. Bodies littered the corridor, some of Matteo's men, more of the attackers. The assault was astonishingly coordinated and brutally effective. They reached the main staircase just as a cluster of masked gunmen surged up from the first floor. Matteo fired with chilling precision, each shot finding its mark. Frankie covered the left flank. Clara pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering wildly. The bloodied lamp still clutched in her hands. "South entrance is breached," a voice crackled over the radio. "They're trying to flank." An explosion rocked the mansion. The lights flickered violently, then died, plunging them into darkness. Emergency generators kicked in a few seconds later, bathing the scene in a dim, eerie red glow. "They're trying to cut the power completely," Vincent's voice rasped through Matteo's radio. "Get to the safe room. They're going to storm the building." But Matteo wasn't retreating. Clara saw it in his eyes, the cold calculation, the raw fury. He had been cornered, and cornered predators were the most lethal. "How many?" Matteo demanded into the radio. 12 confirmed, potentially more outside. Positions, 4 down, 8 active, dispersed across first and second floors. Matteo's jaw tightened. He looked from Clara to his men. "Frankie, take Clara to the safe room with her family. Vincent, coordinate defense from the control room. Everyone else, with me. We end this now." "Boss, they outnumber us," one guard began. "I don't care." Matteo's voice was ice-cold steel. "They invaded my home, attempted to abduct someone under my protection. They will not leave here breathing." He started down the stairs, and his men followed without a moment's hesitation, their loyalty absolute. Clara grasped his arm. "Wait, let me help." Matteo turned, and for a fleeting moment, she saw beyond the ruthless boss to the vulnerable man beneath. "You've already helped more than enough. That lamp—" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "That was truly impressive, but this is my world now. Let me handle it." "Those men want me," Clara insisted. "If I hide, your people will die protecting me." "That's their job," Matteo stated plainly, his hand covering hers for a brief, reassuring moment. "And mine is keeping you alive, whatever it takes." Another explosion, this one alarmingly closer. Windows shattered somewhere below. "Go!" Matteo commanded, his voice firm. "Frankie will protect you." He paused at the top of the stairs, looking at Clara. "And Clara, thank you for Tommy, for choosing to fight." Then he disappeared into the chaos. Clara realized with a startling clarity that she was no longer afraid for herself. She was afraid for him. Frankie pulled her toward the safe room, but Clara cast one last glance back. Through the billowing smoke and relentless gunfire, she saw Matteo moving like a primal force of nature, precise, lethal, unstoppable. And in that moment, she finally understood why his enemies feared him so profoundly. Dawn broke over the Vitali estate. painting the scene of devastation in stark shades of gold and blood. Clara stood in the doorway of the safe room, surveying the aftermath. Bullet holes scarred the once pristine walls. Shards of broken glass glinted across the marble floors. Furniture lay overturned and shattered. 3 of Matteo's guards were dead, 5 more wounded, but all 12 attackers were gone. Some lay dead, others captured and taken to the basement for interrogation. Matteo had won, but barely. She discovered him in his study, standing with his back to the door, gazing out the window. His shirt was ripped and stained with blood, most of which wasn't his own. His knuckles were raw and split. He clutched a glass of whiskey, though he hadn't taken a sip. "You should be resting," Clara murmured. "So should you," he replied, not turning around. "Your mother and sister are terrified, but safe. Frankie placed them in a reinforced suite with 2 guards. Clara stepped further into the room. "Mom, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't—" "Don't." He finally turned, and Clara saw exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "Calibris orchestrated this, not you. He attacked my home, killed my men. This is war now, and wars have casualties. 3 men died protecting me. 3 men died protecting what's mine. There's a difference." Matteo set down the untouched whiskey. "Vincent interrogated one of the survivors. They weren't supposed to kill you, just grab you and leave. Calibris wants you alive." Clara's blood ran cold. "Why?" "Because you're a symbol now, the waitress who defied him. If he parades you in front of the other families, it shows them I couldn't protect you. It destroys my reputation." Matteo's voice was tinged with bitterness. "In my world, perception is everything. Power is nothing without fear and respect." "Then give me to him," Clara heard herself say again, despite knowing it was futile. "End this before more people die." "No, Matteo, I said no." He moved closer, his eyes blazing. "You know what I realized during that fight? When I saw you standing over those attackers with that blood-covered lamp, still breathing." He stopped inches from her. "You're not a liability. You're a fighter, and fighters are valuable." Clara's breath hitched at his proximity. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we stop pretending you're just an innocent waitress I'm protecting out of obligation." Matteo's voice dropped lower. "You want to find your brother? I want to destroy Carlo Calibris. Our goals align. An alliance. A partnership." Matteo extended his hand. "You give me everything you know. Every detail, every face, every memory that might help me build a case against Calibris. In return, I use my resources, my connections, my entire organization to find out what happened to Antonio." Clara stared at his outstretched hand. This was insane. Partnering with a mafia boss to investigate her brother's disappearance meant diving deeper into a world she'd spent her life avoiding. Yet, that world had already swallowed her whole. She took his hand. Deal. Matteo's grip was firm, warm. "Then we start now. Vincent has files on every known Calibris operation from the past 5 years. We go through everything. Look for patterns, connections to your brother's case. What if we don't find anything? Then we make him tell us." Matteo's smile was dangerous. "One of those attackers in my basement used to work directly for Carlo. By tonight, he'll tell us everything he knows." Clara should have been horrified by the implication. Instead, she felt a dark satisfaction. They spent the next 4 hours buried in files. Vincent joined them, bringing boxes of documents, surveillance photos, financial records. Clara's eyes burned from reading, but she pushed through, searching for anything familiar. "Wait." She pulled out a photograph. "A restaurant in Indianapolis, not my family's place. I know this building. It's 2 blocks from Papa Giovanni's. They opened right after we closed." Vincent checked his notes. "Russo's Bistro opened 18 months ago by Vincent Russo's cousin, Anthony Russo. It's a legitimate business on paper, but we suspect it's a money laundering front." "They replaced us," Clara said bitterly. "Drove us out of business and took our location's customer base. Not just you." Matteo spread out more photos. 7 family restaurants in Indianapolis closed in the same 6-month period, all replaced by Calibris-connected establishments. It's a pattern squeeze out the independents, moving their own operations. Clara's mind raced. Antonio worked every shift he could. He was always trying to help with bills. What if? She looked up sharply. What if he saw something at one of those other restaurants? Maybe he made deliveries or helped a friend whose family was also being targeted. That would make him a witness to multiple extortion cases. Vincent's eyes gleamed. That's leverage, real leverage. Matteo grabbed his phone. Vincent, pull records on every restaurant that closed in that time frame. Employee lists, delivery schedules, everything. Cross-reference with Antonio Brennan's name. As Vincent worked, Matteo turned to Clara. Tell me about Antonio's friends. Anyone he was close to? Anyone who might have known what he was involved in? Clara thought back. His best friend was Marcus Chen. His family owned a Chinese restaurant, Golden Dragon. I think they closed around the same time we did. Marcus was devastated. Where is Marcus now? I don't know. We lost touch after... Clara's throat tightened. After Antonio disappeared, I couldn't face his friends, couldn't face anyone. We find Marcus Chen. Matteo made a note. If he and Antonio were close, he might know something. They worked through the afternoon and into the evening, pieces slowly clicking together. Clara felt something shifting between them, the suspicion fading, replaced by mutual respect. Matteo listened to her insights without dismissing them. She watched him work with fierce intelligence, seeing past the killer to the strategist underneath. Around 8 p.m., Vincent burst back into the study. Found something. Antonio Brennan made 3 deposits into his family's restaurant account in the month before he disappeared. $500 each time, $1,500 total. Clara's heart stopped. That's impossible. He didn't have that kind of money. He made minimum wage. Exactly. Vincent's expression was grim. So where did it come from? Matteo and Clara exchanged looks. Someone paid him, Clara whispered. To do something, or keep quiet about something, or testify about something, Matteo added. The FBI pays informants. So do rival families. So do people trying to build cases against their enemies. Clara's hands shook. Antonio was 17. He would if it meant saving his family's restaurant. Matteo's voice was gentle. Scared kids do desperate things. Clara, trust me, I know. For a moment, vulnerability flickered across his face. Clara saw the boy. He must have been young, scared, forced into a brutal world too early. We'll find the truth, she said, and realized she believed it. Matteo nodded. Together. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but standing there surrounded by evidence and shared purpose, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. 3 days of searching yielded a breakthrough, and complications nobody expected. Vincent tracked down Marcus Chen in Gary, Indiana, working at his uncle's restaurant. When Matteo and Clara arrived to question him, Marcus took one look at Clara and broke down crying. I tried to stop him, Marcus sobbed in a back office while his uncles served customers. I told Antonio it was too dangerous, but he wouldn't listen. He said it was the only way to save your family. Clara's hands gripped the table. Stop him from what, Marcus? From working with that FBI agent, the one who kept showing up asking questions about the Calibris deliveries. Marcus wiped his eyes. Antonio saw things, Clara, at my family's restaurant, at yours, at others. He saw men counting money in back rooms, saw packages that weren't food being delivered. He figured out what was happening, that all our families were being used for money laundering. Matteo leaned forward. He went to the FBI? The FBI came to him, some agent named Harper. She said they were building a RICO case against organized crime in Indiana, and Antonio's testimony could help. Marcus's voice dropped. Antonio thought if he cooperated, if he gave them evidence, the FBI would protect your family, would make the Calibris people leave you alone. Clara felt like she'd been punched. So he testified? He was going to. Agent Harper said she'd put him in witness protection after the grand jury testimony, but then... Marcus's voice broke. Then he disappeared. 2 days before he was supposed to testify, they grabbed him outside our restaurant. I was there, Clara. I saw the van, saw Vincent Russo drag him inside. I called 911, but by the time police came, they were gone. The room spun. Clara gripped Matteo's arm for support, and his hand immediately covered hers, steadying, grounding. Did you tell the FBI? Matteo asked. Yes, but Agent Harper said there was nothing they could do without a body. She said, sometimes witnesses get cold feet and run. Marcus looked at Clara with haunted eyes. But Antonio wouldn't run. He was doing this for you, For your family. He loved you so much. The dam inside Clara finally broke. She stood abruptly and walked out of the office, through the restaurant, into the cold February air. Tears streamed down her face, 2 years of guilt and grief pouring out at once. Matteo followed her into the parking lot. Clara, he died because of me. Her voice was raw. Because I needed a hero. Because our family was drowning, and I kept crying about it where Antonio could hear. He was 17 years old, and he tried to save us, and they murdered him for it. You didn't know. I should have. Clara spun to face him. I was his older sister. I should have protected him. Should have seen he was involved in something dangerous. Should have... She choked on a sob. God, Matteo. He must have been so scared. And I wasn't there. Matteo pulled her against his chest, and Clara collapsed into him, her tears soaking his shirt. His arms wrapped around her, strong, protective, surprisingly gentle. Listen to me, he said quietly. Antonio made his choice, a brave choice, a stupid choice maybe, but his own. You can't carry that guilt. How do you know? Clara's voice was muffled against him. Because I've carried it. Matteo's arms tightened. Each individual I've lost, every soldier who fell under my command, every civilian caught in the crossfire. I once believed I could orchestrate everything, shield everyone. But that's an illusion. Your only recourse is to honor them through your own survival. Clara drew back slightly, her gaze fixed on his face. For the first time, his emotional guard was entirely absent. She perceived a deep ache, a profound loneliness, an abyss of isolation. She recognized it instantly, for it mirrored her own inner struggles. You're not at all what I anticipated, she breathed. What precisely did you anticipate? He retorted. A monstrosity. Indeed, I am a monster, Matteo affirmed. But even monsters have genesis. My father was brutally murdered when I was 19. His own lieutenant betrayed him, seeking advancement with a rival syndicate. I inherited a crumbling empire, and adversaries circling like predatory sharks. I was presented with 2 stark options. Embrace ruthlessness to endure, or perish. So, you opted for survival? She queried. I chose solitude, his voice barely a whisper. In my existence, every soul is either an asset or a liability. Trust is a luxury, vulnerability a peril. You cannot allow anyone close, for they will assuredly exploit it. I have been alone for 15 long years. Clara, despite being surrounded by people, understood that profound isolation. Her hand instinctively reached for his face, her thumb tracing the sharp line of his jaw. You are not alone in this moment. The atmosphere between them crackled, charged with a potent, perilous electricity. Matteo's eyes deepened as he truly saw her, looking beyond the waitress, beyond the witness, to the woman beneath. Clara, he rasped, his voice gravelly. Whatever this is, it's a disastrous idea. Why? She challenged. Because I lay waste to everything I touch. Because my dominion claims innocent lives. Because you undeniably merit something far superior to... She silenced him with a kiss, a desperate, fierce exchange between 2 damaged souls seeking solace in the enveloping darkness. Matteo's response was instantaneous, his hand weaving into her hair, intensifying the embrace with a fervor that stole her breath. Clara had never felt so intensely alive in years, terrified yet exhilarated, completely unmoored from everything she'd ever known. When they finally separated, both breathing heavily, Matteo rested his forehead against hers. This complicates matters, he murmured. Everything's already complicated, she countered, a faint smile gracing her lips. Fair point. They returned to Chicago, in a charged silence, their hands interwoven across the center console. As they passed through the estate gates, Clara noticed Frankie and Tommy observing them from the entrance, their expressions taut with apprehension. Inside, the hushed murmurs had already begun. The boss is distracted, she overheard one guard confide to another. 3 days fixated on the girl, neglecting business. Calibris is still at large, Tommy stated sharply to Frankie in the hallway. We lost 3 men, and instead of planning retribution, he's playing detective for her brother. He's invested, Frankie replied, his tone cautious. He's compromised, Tommy's voice was harsh. I've served him for 8 years. I've never witnessed him like this. That girl has utterly consumed his thoughts, and it will be the death of us all. Clara's stomach clenched. She intercepted Matteo before they reached his study. Your men believe I'm diverting you. They worry excessively, he dismissed. Are they correct? Matteo studied her, a flicker of internal conflict in his gaze. Yes, but I simply don't care. He cupped her face. For 15 years, every decision I've made has been predicated on strategy, on power, on sheer survival. For once I am making a choice based on something entirely different. What? She probed. You. His thumb brushed her cheek. And before you object, I acknowledge it's reckless. I know it renders me vulnerable. But Clara, you reawaken in me what it means to be human, to care about something beyond empire and retribution. Clara's heart ached. Matteo, I understand this cannot endure. I know reality will eventually shatter whatever this is. But until then, he kissed her forehead. Allow me to be distracted. Allow me to be weak. Allow me to feel something beyond this pervasive hollowness. She chastised herself for not being more astute, for not recognizing the inherent peril in falling for a man whose very existence was predicated on violence. Yet, standing there in the opulent shadows of his mansion, Clara realized she was already consumed, and she had no desire to cease her descent. The revelation struck at midnight, while Clara wrestled with insomnia. She had left her suite, seeking water from the kitchen, navigating the hushed, darkened mansion. As she passed Matteo's study, muffled voices reached her, low, urgent, imbued with anger. The figures simply don't reconcile, Vincent's voice sharp with accusation. Someone alerted Calibris about your presence at the diner that night. Only 4 individuals knew your schedule. My inner circle, you, Tommy, Frankie, and Marco. Marco is deceased, Matteo's voice was deadly calm. That leaves 3 of us. You suspect I harbor a traitor within my inner circle? The temperature in the room seemed to plummet. I believe someone has been feeding information to Calibris for months. The failed shipment in October, the warehouse raid in December, the assassination attempt. Vincent's voice hardened. Far too many coincidences, Matteo. Someone close to you covets your demise. Clara flattened herself against the cold wall, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm. A traitor. One of the men she had implicitly trusted with her life. Retrieve financial records for everyone, Matteo commanded. Bank accounts, properties, everything. If someone is being compensated, I will expose them. Already done, a rustling of papers. I've uncovered something rather intriguing. 3 offshore accounts linked to shell companies. Payments totaling $500,000 over the past year. Who? Vincent's subsequent words congealed Clara's blood. Tommy Rosini. A thick silence. Then, no. Tommy has been with me for 8 years. He saved my life in Detroit. He would never... The evidence is irrefutable. Payments precisely coincide with every failed operation. And there's more. Vincent's voice dropped. I traced the shell company ownership. It's registered to the same corporation that owned that warehouse in Indianapolis, the one where Clara's family left the ransom money. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Tommy was implicated in Antonio's abduction. I suspect Tommy has collaborated with Calibris for years. Matteo's voice was lethally quiet. The kidnapping, the assassination attempt, everything. He has strategically positioned himself to seize control of your organization once you're dead. Where is he now? Vincent asked. Should be on patrol. East Wing, 2nd shift. Bring him to me discreetly. And Vincent? A pause. If he resists, eliminate him. Clara heard movement. Then the study door opened. She pressed herself into a darkened doorway as Vincent hurried past, radioing for backup. She should have fled back to her room. Should have remained uninvolved. Instead, she crept closer to the study. Through the cracked door, she saw Matteo standing at his desk, staring at the incriminating evidence, betrayal etched into every line of his face. Then she heard it. Footsteps behind her. Poor Pop was a fool. Clara whirled around just as Tommy appeared at the end of the hallway, a gun clutched in his hand. But he wasn't alone. 3 additional guards flanked him, men Clara didn't recognize, their expressions cold and adversarial. Well, well, Tommy's smile was vicious. The little waitress, venturing where she doesn't belong. Did you overhear something rather captivating, Clara? She instinctively retreated toward the study. "Matteo!" Tommy fired. The bullet impacted the wall mere inches from Clara's head, and she screamed. Matteo burst through the study door, his weapon raised. He instantly assessed the scene. Tommy and his men, Clara trapped between them. "Tommy!" Matteo's voice was pure ice. "Lower the gun." "Can't do that, boss." Tommy's smile widened. "You see, I have new employers now. Better compensation, a brighter future. Carlo Calibris extends his regards." "You orchestrated the assassination?" "Indeed. It would have succeeded too if this hadn't intervened." Tommy gestured at Clara with his gun. "But that's acceptable. Calibris desires her alive, regardless. And you, he desires dead. You murdered Marco, my driver, my friend. Collateral damage." Tommy shrugged dismissively. "Nothing personal, purely business." "You facilitated the abduction of a 17-year-old boy." Matteo's voice trembled with raw fury. "Antonio Brennan, you were there." Tommy laughed maliciously. "That was merely a rehearsal. Calabris wished to trial his Indianapolis operations, and some restaurant kid proved a convenient target. A pity the FBI reached him first, though. He would have made excellent bargaining leverage." Clara felt her world lurch. "Antonio went to the FBI? And we discovered—" Tommy's eyes gleamed. "Grabbed him before he could testify. Calibris wanted him dead, but I persuaded him the boy was more valuable alive. Leverage against federal witnesses. He's been languishing in a black site for 2 years." "He's alive?" Clara's voice fractured. "For now." Tommy's smile was cruel. "But after tonight, after Matteo is dead and I assume control of this organization, he's next. Can't leave any loose ends." "You won't lay a hand on him," Matteo snarled. "You won't be alive to prevent me." Tommy nodded to his men. They raised their weapons. Clara witnessed it unfold in agonizing slow motion. 4 guns aimed at Matteo, fingers tightening on triggers. She moved without conscious thought, throwing herself sideways into Matteo as the gunfire erupted. They hit the ground together, bullets tearing through the space where Matteo had stood moments before. Clara felt a searing pain across her shoulder, but ignored it, rolling behind a marble column as Matteo returned fire with deadly precision. One of Tommy's men collapsed, then another, but the third caught Matteo in the side, and Clara saw a crimson stain bloom across his shirt. "Matteo!" She grabbed him as he stumbled. "I'm fine!" he gritted out, firing again. The third guard dropped. Tommy ducked behind a corner, reloading. "Should have remained loyal, boss. Carlo is going to bestow everything upon me. Your territory, your wealth, your power. You'll have to kill me first." Matteo advanced despite the blood gushing from his wound. "That's precisely the plan." Tommy lunged around the corner, gun raised, but Frankie materialized behind him, his own weapon pressed against Tommy's skull. "Drop it!" Frankie snarled. "Now!" Tommy froze. "Frankie, I can offer you a share. You murdered Marco. You attempted to kill our boss. You are a dead man." Sirens wailed in the distance. More guards thundered down the hallways, Vincent leading them. Tommy's expression twisted into pure hatred. "This isn't over. Calibris has others embedded within your organization. You'll never know whom to trust." Frankie pulled the trigger. Tommy collapsed, leaving an eerie silence in the hallway, broken only by Matteo's gasping breaths. Clara pressed her hands to his wound, desperately trying to stem the blood flow. "Stay with me. Please, stay with me, Matteo," she pleaded, her voice trembling. His face was ghostly pale, his eyes unfocused. "Your brother, he's alive. We'll find him. We will together. But first, you have to survive." Tears streamed down her face. "Don't you dare die on me, Matteo, Vitali." His blood-slicked hand found hers. "Wasn't planning to. Not when I finally found someone worth living for." Then his eyes rolled back, and he slumped unconscious in her arms. "Medic!" Clara shrieked. "Someone get a doctor now!" As guards swarmed and Vincent barked orders into his phone, Clara cradled Matteo's inert body, making a silent, fierce promise. She would find her brother, destroy Carlo Calibris, and ensure Matteo lived to see it, no matter the cost. Matteo clung to life through sheer unyielding stubbornness. The bullet had missed his vital organs by mere millimeters, yet he had lost a perilous amount of blood. For 3 days, he drifted between fleeting consciousness and feverish nightmares while a private surgeon worked ceaselessly to save him. Clara remained a constant vigil at his bedside. She dismissed Vincent's suggestions to rest, ignored her mother's pleas to eat, and paid no mind to the guards who whispered that she was squandering her time on a dying man. She sat steadfastly in that chair, holding Matteo's hand, willing him to live. On the 4th day, his eyes fluttered open. "Clara," his voice barely audible, croaked. She leaned forward, a wave of profound relief washing over her. "I'm here. You're going to be okay. Tommy dead. Frankie killed him." Clara squeezed his hand. "Vincent's been investigating his connections. He found evidence of 2 other Calibri informants in your organization. They've been dealt with." Matteo attempted to sit up, gasping in pain. "Don't." Clara gently eased him back down. "The doctor said you need at least 2 weeks of rest." "Don't have 2 weeks." Matteo's eyes, despite his weakness, burned with a fierce determination. "Tommy said Antonio's alive, in a black site. We need to find him before Calibris moves him, or he trailed off, unwilling to complete the sentence. "I know," Clara's voice was as hard as steel. "And we will. But first, you need to heal." "Clara, I spent 3 days stitching you back together, Matteo Vitali. I'm not letting you die from stubbornness." She stood, adjusting his pillows with practiced efficiency. "So rest, build your strength, and when you can stand without bleeding, we'll go get my brother." Over the next week, Clara became Matteo's unwavering companion and an unofficial nurse. She meticulously changed his bandages, monitored his vitals, and coaxed him to eat even when he had no appetite. She read reports to him as he recovered, helping Vincent coordinate operations from the bedroom. Gradually, Matteo mended, and as he did, an unspoken bond between them deepened, a connection forged in blood, trust, vulnerability, and unwavering strength. On the 10th day, Matteo stood unassisted. "I'm ready," he declared. Vincent, working tirelessly, had used Tommy's phone records and financial data to pinpoint Calibris's operations. He finally located it, a warehouse complex in Hammond, Indiana, 30 miles from Chicago. Satellite imagery revealed substantial security, unusual activity, and temperature signatures indicative of an underground facility. "That's where they're keeping high-value detainees," Vincent explained, spreading maps across Matteo's desk. "Antonio's there, I'm certain." Matteo meticulously studied the layout. Fortified, 12 guards minimum, maybe more inside. This isn't a snatch and grab. This is a war. "Then we go to war," Clara stated from the doorway. Everyone turned. She stood clad in dark jeans and a black jacket, her hair pulled back, her expression resolute. "Absolutely not," Matteo immediately responded. "This is a combat operation." "For my brother, I'm coming," Clara insisted. "Clara, you could be killed, and he could be dead by the time you get there." Her voice rose. "Matteo, please. I've waited 2 years. I need to be there. I need to see him." Matteo looked at her. This woman who had saved his life twice, who had refused to abandon him when he was dying, who had somehow become the most crucial person in his world. "You stay behind me at all times," he finally conceded. "You follow orders, and at the first sign of serious trouble, Frankie pulls you out. Understood?" Clara nodded. "Understood." They moved at 3 a.m., a convoy of 3 vehicles carrying Matteo's elite fighters. Frankie drove the lead car, with Clara and Matteo. The assault was meticulously planned with military precision. Vincent had bribed a security company employee for the warehouse's electronic codes, granting them a 15-minute window before law enforcement responded. It had to be enough. They parked a block away and approached on foot. The warehouse loomed against the night sky, dark and menacing. Matteo gave hand signals, and his men fanned out, taking positions. "Cameras disabled," Vincent whispered through the radio. "You're clear." They moved like shadows. Frankie expertly cut the lock on a side entrance, and they slipped inside a labyrinth of corridors and storage rooms reeking of rust and fear. The first guard died silently, Matteo's knife finding his throat before he could utter a sound. The second managed a choked warning before Frankie silenced him. Then an alarm shrieked. "So much for stealth," Matteo growled. "Go loud, find the basement level." Gunfire erupted. Matteo's team engaged Calibri guards with ruthless efficiency, while Clara stayed close to Frankie, her heart pounding. This was real combat violent, chaotic. Nothing like the movies. They fought through 2 levels, leaving bodies in their wake. Finally, they found stairs leading down into darkness. "Basement," Frankie said. "Has to be." They descended into a concrete corridor lined with steel door cells. Clara's stomach churned. How many people were imprisoned here? "Antonio!" she shouted. "Antonio Brennan!" "Clara!" A voice, weak but unmistakable, echoed. "Clara!" She ran toward the sound, Matteo and Frankie flanking her. Third door on the left, padlocked, reinforced. "Stand back." Matteo fired 3 shots, obliterating the lock mechanism. Frankie kicked the door open. The cell was tiny, filthy, barely lit, and huddled in the corner, thin and beaten, but miraculously alive, was Antonio. "Oh my God!" Clara rushed forward, dropping to her knees. "Antonio, Antonio, it's me!" Her brother looked up with hollow eyes, disbelief etched across his gaunt face. "This isn't real. You're not real. They keep showing me things." "I'm real!" Clara grabbed his hands, too thin, scarred, trembling. "I'm here. I found you. We're getting you out." Antonio collapsed into her arms, sobbing. 2 years of torture and isolation unraveling in that moment. Clara held him, tears streaming down her face, barely believing he was alive. "We need to move," Matteo said gently. "Clara, can he walk?" I think so." She helped Antonio stand. He was so thin, so broken. Rage burned through her grief. Calibris had done this, had stolen 2 years of her brother's life. "Can you tell us anything?" Matteo asked Antonio. "About who kept you here, what they wanted?" Antonio's eyes focused on Matteo with sudden recognition. You're Matteo Vitali. Tommy Rossini said..." He stopped, confused. "He said you'd never find me, that you didn't care about civilians." "Tommy's dead," Matteo stated flatly. "And he was wrong." They made it halfway back to the stairs before an explosion rocked the building. The ceiling collapsed, separating Clara and Antonio from Matteo and the others. Dust and debris filled the air, and through it, Clara saw a figure approaching. Tall, silver-haired, an expensive suit covered in dust. Carlo Calibris stepped out of the smoke like a demon from hell. "Well, well," he said, gun aimed at Clara's head. "Matteo Vitali's little waitress, you've caused me considerable trouble." Behind the rubble, Clara heard Matteo shouting her name, but he couldn't reach her, not in time. "Let them go," Clara said, stepping in front of her broken brother. "You want someone? Take me." Calibris smiled coldly. "Oh, I intend to. But first..." He raised his gun toward Antonio. "I'm eliminating my mistakes." Clara closed her eyes, bracing for the end. Then gunfire erupted, not from Calibris, but from behind him. Calibris spun toward the gunfire, but Matteo was already through the smoke, blood seeping through his bandages. Yet, his aim was perfect. The bullet caught Calibris in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. His gun clattered to the floor. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," Matteo said, advancing with cold fury. Frankie and 3 other guards emerged behind him, weapons trained on Calibris's men, who had been waiting in the shadows. "This isn't over, Vitali," Calibris clutched his bleeding shoulder. "It is." Matteo's gun never wavered. "You orchestrated an assassination attempt, attacked my home, kidnapped and tortured a 17-year-old kid, planted traitors in my organization." His voice dropped to something lethal. "You made this personal. Kill me, and the other families will come for you." "Let them try." Matteo glanced at Clara and Antonio, ensuring they were safe. "But you don't get a quick death. You get federal prison, witness testimony, RICO charges. Every crime documented and proven. You'll die behind bars, forgotten and powerless." Calibris's face went white. "You're turning me over to the feds?" "Agent Harper has been very cooperative." Matteo smiled without warmth. "Turns out she's been wanting to nail you for years. When I offered her Antonio's testimony, plus evidence of your black site operations, she was more than willing to make a deal." "You're working with the FBI?" Calibris spat blood. "You've betrayed everything. I'm doing what I should have done years ago, ending you." Sirens wailed outside, closer now, purposeful. The FBI had been waiting for Matteo's signal. "Get Antonio out of here," Matteo ordered Frankie. "Clara goes with him. Now!" Clara helped her brother toward the exit, but she looked back at Matteo one last time. Their eyes met across the rubble and smoke, and something profound passed between them. Gratitude, affection, and a profound connection beyond words intertwined their gazes. Then she stepped outside, inhaling the crisp air as FBI agents swarmed the warehouse. Agent Harper, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, approached with paramedics. "Antonio Brennan?" she inquired gently. Antonio nodded, clutching Clara. "You're safe now. We have medical transport prepared and a comprehensive protective detail. You're going to be all right." Harper then addressed Clara. "Your testimony and Mr. Vitali's collaboration have provided us with everything necessary. Carlo Calibri is finished." An hour later, Clara stood outside the hospital where Antonio was undergoing evaluation. Her mother and Emma had arrived, their reunion tearful and overwhelming. Antonio was malnourished and traumatized, yet alive. The doctors confirmed he would physically recover. However, emotional scars would take longer to heal. Clara sought fresh air outside and discovered Matteo waiting by a black SUV with Vincent beside him. Both appeared exhausted but unharmed. "How is he?" Matteo asked. "He'll survive, thanks to you," Clara replied, moving closer. "The FBI mentioned you made a deal. You testified against Calibris." "It seemed like the right move." Matteo's expression remained unreadable. "Calibris goes to prison. My organization receives immunity for its cooperation. And your brother gets witness protection if he desires it." "And what about us?" Clara gestured towards the hospital, encompassing her family. Matteo remained silent for a long moment. "My council met an hour ago. Vincent, Frankie, and the other captains. They wanted me to cut you loose, pay you off, relocate you far away, eliminate any connection between your family and my organization." Clara's heart sank. "And I told them no." Vincent stepped forward, his expression stern but not unkind. "Miss Brennan, you've become what we call a liability. You know too much about Mr. Vitali's operations. Your family's presence creates vulnerabilities. Traditional wisdom dictates we sever all ties." But Clara looked at Matteo. "But I'm not traditional." Matteo moved closer, his eyes fixed on hers. "You saved my life that night in the parking lot. You saved Tommy during the attack. You refused to abandon me when I was dying. You risked everything to find your brother, and, in doing so, helped me destroy my most dangerous enemy." He took her hand, and Clara felt her breath catch. "You're not a liability, Clara. You're an asset. More than that, you're someone I trust in a world where trust is rarer than gold." "Matteo, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want you to stay. You, your mother, your sister, Antonio, when he's ready. I'll establish your family, legitimate businesses, protection, security. Your mother gets her restaurant back, Emma finishes college, Antonio gets the help he needs." Clara's eyes widened. "You'd do all that?" "I'd do more," Matteo's voice softened. "I'd offer you a place in my organization if you wanted. You're smart, brave, resourceful. You discern patterns others miss. You'd be invaluable in my world. Your world almost got me killed. It did, multiple times." Matteo's smile was slight but genuine. "But you're still here, still fighting. That signifies something." Vincent cleared his throat. "For what it's worth, Miss Brennan, I recommended this arrangement. You've proven yourself trustworthy under impossible circumstances. That's rare." Clara looked between them, her mind reeling. A week ago, she was a waitress concerned about rent. Now she was being offered a role in a mafia organization, protection for her family, and something she'd never anticipated, a sense of belonging. "What about us?" she asked Matteo quietly, referring to their enigmatic connection. "That's your choice." Matteo's thumb brushed across her knuckles. "I won't pretend my world is safe or normal, but if you want to try, if you want to see where this goes, I'm willing to risk it." Clara reflected on everything she had lost, her father, 2 years with Antonio, her innocence. Yet she also considered what she had gained, strength, purpose, and a man who looked at her as if she were the most vital person in his perilous existence. "I want my mother far removed from any illicit activities," she stated finally, Emma finishes school without knowing the details. Antonio receives therapy and time to heal. Done. And I want to learn everything. How your organization works, how to protect myself, how to genuinely be useful instead of merely protected. Matteo's smile broadened.